Mara, Mara, Mara. Listen closely. Can you hear it shifting? Mara, Mara, Rama, Rama, Rama. A man who could not speak the name of God would one day give that name to the entire world. This is the story of how a single word can change everything. Long ago, in a forest where travelers feared to walk, there lived a man named Ratnakara. He was no ordinary hunter. He was a dacoit, a bandit who robbed and sometimes killed those who passed through his territory. For years, this was his life. Violence was his trade. Fear was his currency. And he told himself it was necessary, that his family depended on him, that he had no other choice. One day, a wandering sage entered the forest. His name was Narada, a name we will come to know more deeply as this story unfolds. Where others saw danger, Narada walked with perfect calm. Ratnakara blocked his path, expecting the usual terror. But Narada simply looked at him, not with fear, not with judgment, but with something Ratnakara had never encountered before: compassion. Instead of pleading for his life, Narada asked a question. "Tell me, friend, why do you do this?" Ratnakara answered as he always did. "To provide for my family. They depend on what I bring home." Narada nodded slowly. Then he asked another question, one that would crack open Ratnakara's entire world. "Your family shares in the wealth you steal. But tell me, will they also share in the sin you carry? Will they stand beside you when you face the consequences of these acts?" Ratnakara had never considered this. He opened his mouth to answer, but found he could not. He told Narada to wait. He ran home to ask his family the question himself, and one by one, they answered, "We eat what you bring. We wear what you provide. But your sins, those are yours alone." In that moment, Ratnakara's entire life unraveled. Everything he had told himself, every justification, every excuse, crumbled to dust. He had been utterly alone all along. He returned to Narada, not as a dacoit, but as a man desperate for redemption. "What can I do?" he begged. "How can I be freed from what I have become?" Narada's answer was unexpected. "Chant the name of Rama," he said. "Let it fill your mind, your breath, your being." But Ratnakara tried and could not. The name would not come. His tongue, so accustomed to curses and threats, could not form the sacred sound. "I cannot say it," he admitted, shame flooding his face. Narada smiled. "Then say what you can. Say Mara, the word for death. Say it again and again. Let the rhythm carry you." And so Ratnakara began to chant the only word he could, the word for death. What he did not yet know was that repeated fast enough, spoken long enough, Mara 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 would become something else entirely. Rama, Rama, Rama. Ratnakara did not move from his spot. He chanted through hunger, through thirst, through the ache of his own body. Mara, Mara, Mara. The forest continued around him. Animals passed, seasons began to shift, and still he chanted. Ratnakara was not the first to discover what Narada knew. This wandering sage had spent lifetimes sharing this secret. Once Narada encountered an ascetic, a man of great discipline and greater pride. This ascetic had practiced for decades. He had mastered postures, controlled his breath, memorized scriptures. Yet something was missing, and he knew it. When Narada spoke of the power of simply repeating the divine name, the ascetic scoffed. "Surely," he said, "true transformation requires concentration, focus, years of effort. You cannot simply repeat a word and expect enlightenment." Narada did not argue. He simply said, "Try it." Not in meditation, while walking, while eating, while resting. Say Rama without effort, without forcing belief. Just say it. The ascetic agreed, if only to prove Narada wrong. Days passed, then weeks, and something began to shift. His anger, the anger he had never acknowledged, began to soften. His thoughts, always racing to the next achievement, began to slow. His pride, the pride that had defined him, began to loosen its grip. Nothing dramatic happened. No visions, no revelations, just quiet. Where there had been noise, there was now stillness. The ascetic never became famous. He simply became free. When he asked Narada how this was possible, the sage replied with words that would echo through the ages. Sacred names do not demand concentration. They create it. And so it was for Ratnakara. Months became years. Years became something beyond counting. So still was his meditation that the creatures of the forest forgot he was human. Ants built their home around him. An anthill, a Valmika in Sanskrit, rose over his body until he vanished completely within it. But inside that mound of earth, the sound never stopped. Mara, Mara, Rama, Rama. The word that had begun as death was becoming the name of God. What happens when you repeat a word 10,000 times, 100,000, a million? The word stops being a word. It becomes breath. It becomes heartbeat. It becomes the fabric of your being. Ratnakara, the dacoit, was dying. Not his body. His body still breathed within that earthen cocoon. But everything he had been, the violence, the fear, the shame, was burning away, and something new was being born. One morning, the anthill cracked. The man who emerged was not Ratnakara. He was Valmiki, named for the very anthill that had sheltered his transformation. The word Valmika would forever mark his rebirth. The hunter had become a sage. The man who could not say Rama had been reborn through that very name. But Valmiki's story raises a question that haunts us. He was sincere. He chanted with his whole being for years. Surely that is why the name worked. But what if there is no sincerity at all? What if the speaker doesn't even mean to call upon the divine? Consider Ajamila. Born a Brahmin, trained in sacred duties, he had abandoned everything for a life of pleasure. He had a son, his youngest, his favorite. And in a moment of tenderness, he had named this boy Narayana, after the Lord himself. It was just a name. He didn't mean anything sacred by it. When death came for Ajamila, it did not come gently. The Yamadutas, the messengers of Yama, Lord of Death, appeared at his bedside. They carried ropes to bind his soul and drag it to face judgment. In his terror, Ajamila did the only thing he could think of. He cried out for the one person he loved most in the world. Narayan. He was calling for his son, just his son. But the name he spoke was the name of God, and the name answered. The Vishnudutas, messengers of Lord Vishnu, appeared in a blaze of light. They blocked the servants of death. "You cannot take this man," they declared. "He has uttered the name of our Lord." The Yamadutas protested. "He meant no devotion. He was calling for his child. He has lived a sinful life." The Vishnudutas replied with words that would echo through eternity. It does not matter. The name carries its own power. It does not require understanding. It does not require intent. It only requires to be spoken. And the servants of death withdrew. Ajamila was given another chance. He would go on to live his remaining years in genuine devotion, transformed not by his own merit, but by a name he had spoken without even meaning to. And what of Valmiki, the sage born from an anthill? He would go on to compose the Ramayana, the epic story of Rama himself. The very name he could not speak would become the story he gave to the world. The hunter who could not say Rama became the poet who told Rama's story to all of humanity. The word that had transformed him would now transform countless others for thousands of years to come. What do these stories tell us? 3 men, 3 different paths, 3 different levels of intention. Valmiki could not even pronounce the name correctly. He chanted Mara, death, and it still became Rama. The ascetic chanted without concentration, without striving, without even believing it would work. And still, his heart softened. Ajamila spoke the name by accident, meaning nothing sacred at all. And still, the name answered. The power was never in the speaker. It was never in their worthiness, their pronunciation, their intention, or their understanding. The power was always and only in the name itself. Words are not just sounds, they are not just symbols. In the ancient understanding, words carry their own life, their own memory, their own destiny. Sacred names do not demand concentration, they create it. Words shape memory, memory shapes destiny. And sometimes a single word can change who you are.